Hi, today I'm going to be making a vegetable fried rice that I learned while traveling over in Thailand this last summer. First of all, we'll start off with the ingredients. To serve up 2 people. So generally I take 1 cup of white jasmine long grain rice and I rinse it very, very well. Now you have the option of either cooking it on the stove. Generally it's equal parts water to rice, and you can cook it on the stove you bring it to a boil, and then you drop it down to a simmer and let it cook for roughly 15 to 20 minutes. I suggest checking that rice at this time. For this particular dish, I have a rice cooker, and after I was done washing the rice, I just put it in the rice. Now this dish requires about 2 decent sized handfuls or pinches of fresh kale, a 1/4 cup of white onions sliced thinly, a 1/4 cup of green onions, 1 whole Roma tomato, a 1/4 cup of shredded carrots, and a 1/4 cup of white cabbage. Since this is a vegetable fried rice that I'll be preparing, I like to use a lot of tofu in the dish to kind of add to the protein element of this. And generally how I like to do my tofu is fry it in a little canola oil. Is some canola oil already ready to go in the wok. And I'm just going to let this heat up to a really hot temperature before I add the tofu. Now once you see the oil starting to heat up and steam a little bit, it's a good time to add the tofu. I like to mix the tofu down into the oil a little bit. And we're just going to fry that up for a few minutes. Now when you throw the tofu in, it does have a tendency to stick to the bottom, so I occasionally just like to come over and stir the tofu, make sure that it's all evenly separated and covered nicely by the hot canola oil. Now while cooking this dish, it's important to remember to cook it on high. The higher the heat, the better your results are going to be. This tofu's been cooking on a high heat in canola oil for about 5 minutes, and for my personal taste, I think that's about enough time to fry it. I like to pull the tofu off and just let it drain on a paper towel while I'm preparing the rest of the meal. For the cooking of the pad thai, I add about 1/4 cup of canola oil to the wok and heat it up. And I forgot to mention earlier, instead of just doing the soybean tofu for the source of protein, you can do 1 to 2 eggs per person. Since I'm making a 2-person dish, I'm just going to go ahead and use 3 eggs. So this is kind of a pescatarian, vegetarian dish, to be more precise. If you don't want to have the eggs, you can take them out. I feel that they add a lot of great flavor. So once the 1/4 cup of oil starts to heat up a little bit, what I'm going to do is add the eggs first. And I want to stress, I am not a professional chef, so please bear with me on my technique. Once the eggs have been added to the wok, just give them a quick stir in the oil and break them up in a scrambled egg sort of manner. Now your eggs have been blended with the oil to give everything a really nice coating. Now before the eggs fully cook, add the kale and stir in. And the kale's going to pick up some of that oil and cook really nice for the dish. I do the kale first because it generally takes longer to cook than the rest of the vegetables. And it brings out a lot of the flavor as well. Now once the kale's added to the eggs, generally this process is great for timing. Everything that you add to that gets about an extra minute to 2 minutes of cooking. So once we start this process, it goes really, really quick. And it's a great meal to make for friends or family whenever they're coming over. My wife and I have been traveling a lot, so we've made this dish for a lot of people. Now at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and add in all the vegetables. So I've got the white onion, the green onion, the tomato, the carrots.
Thank you.
And the cabbage. Give this all a really nice good stir. And again, I'm going to let this cook for about 1 to 2 minutes. Just heat everything up really nice. So now that that's been warming up for about a minute, I'm going to add the pre-cooked 1 cup of rice to the dish. Just throw it right in the pan. And before I stir it in, I give a nice generous coating of soy sauce. And we just mix that all together. I don't have an exact amount that I use for the soy sauce. It's always best to maybe start out with a little less, and you can always add more as you're making the dish. But I find a couple passes back and forth over the rice generally covers it well enough. I might add a little extra here. And again, I'm cooking all of this on a high heat. And I stir for about a minute. And now I add the croutons into the dish. I do a few sprinkles of sea salt to help add the flavor. Now Thai food is generally a spicier dish. So I use crushed red peppers to add the spice to this dish. I've found that about 1 tablespoon is good for a mild spice. 2 tablespoons or anything over 1, you're going to start to add a lot of flavor and heat. My wife and I really like this dish to be pretty hot, so I'm going to do 2 healthy tablespoons of crushed red pepper. And to top it off, it doesn't matter. This particular sugar is organic coconut sugar. You don't have to have organic coconut sugar. You can use any sort of purified cane sugar or whatever you wish to use. But I'm going to add about a tablespoon of sugar into the dish, and it adds just a nice sweetness to the spice. And enhances that flavor quite a bit. And that's about all you need to know to make a vegetarian style Thai fried rice. I'm going to turn down my heat. Just let that stay warm, mix it up. Now something else that you can do, now at the very end you can garnish with a lime. Just cut it into wedges, serve it with your dish. Just adds a nice little citrus flavor to the top of it. Now, something else, my wife and I are traveling and we're taking this dish with us, so I chose not to add any meat to it outside of the eggs. But an excellent addition to this dish is if you get 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 shrimp, peeled, uncooked, raw shrimp, and throw it into the oil for about a minute or 2 until it starts to get cooked and pinked, and then I remove that and add the shrimp later on with my croutons, or I'm sorry, with my tofu, not croutons. Mix it all in there, and then you've got a nice little tasty dish. You can do it with chicken, you can do it with pork. I really prefer the shrimp. Feel free to add a little bit of basil in there if you like, if you want to try something different. But this is a really, really, really basic way to prepare fried rice. Pre-cook 1 cup of white jasmine rice with everything else besides the kale. You're looking at about 1/4 cup. Nothing needs to be exact. Once everything's in there and mixed together and heated up, it's a fantastic dish for all ages. So hopefully you like it as much as my wife and I do. So when all said and done, we've got enough fried rice here for 2 people. And all you have to do is just add a little bit of lime and enjoy.